Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Figma for EDU monthly workshop. My name is Miggy. I'm joined by Joanna. Figma Make is a relatively new tool from Figma. When you go to create a new file, you will see a Figma Make file. When you click on that, it's going to prompt you, what is it that you want to make? What Figma Make does is it uses AI to take prompts to create realistic products. You can use it to make prototypes. You can use it to make proof of concepts. You can even use it to be based off of your current designs. I'm going to head back on over to my file. And so this is what I mean by start with a prompt. You can start with a prompt. So you can start with absolutely nothing and request it to begin to build something on the web. So think about it as a web builder, kind of like a web interface, right? And the one thing that you'll notice is that some of the settings that you have before you begin, you can add an attachment. That attachment can either be a Figma frame, it can be an image, and then you can also select a library. So if you published a design library that has design styles, components, and a bunch of other visuals, it can use that library as reference for generating your designs. If you look inside of Figma and you go to assets, you can see that there are some libraries that already exist under UI kits. So you can see Figma's simple design system, and there's also the iOS kits as well. When you have those available, you can kind of publish them internal to your team and use those as starting points for your designs. So as mentioned as well, you can also start with a design. So here I am in Figma. If I right click on a frame, you will see this opportunity to send to Figma Make. This right click feature will take any frame that you have, and it's going to take those visuals and use that as a starting point for the things that you prompt. Another thing that I want to highlight is that as you are creating things with Figma Make, I'm going to show you a bunch of examples in just a moment, but when you're creating things, you can publish them to the web or you can publish them to the community. And what I mean by the community is a community template that others can then use to remix. You also will have the ability to search other make files that people have produced, and you can remix those and learn from them as well. Okay, so let's head on over. I'm going to show you a quick example. The examples that I'm sharing with you today are all of my initial explorations. These are going to be things that I've made with Make just to see how I can build things out. I have a number of different examples across the board. The first example that I'm going to show you here is going to be this Glyph visualizer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the output looks like. I'm going to walk you through some of the prompts, and then I'm going to show you how you can access that. If you are in the file that Joanna just shared out in the chat, or it's going to be available in the comments in YouTube, when you click on this link, it's going to take you over to that Glyph visualizer. So I can see that right here, the 3D Glyph visualizer. And let's actually open this up. So when you see a file in community, you can go remix and you can open it up in your team. And when you see the file that you have here, you can actually scroll up and see the entire history of things that have made this file. I'm going to walk you through what this file actually does right now. So what I had was an idea that I wanted to take a vector graphic that I made in Figma, and I wanted to extrude it in a 3D space. So the whole point here is so I could take screenshots. So you can see it's constantly moving. And what I did was I said, make a 3D visualizer animator with some controls at the bottom. The first control the speed rotation. The second control is his XYZ movement through space. The third controls how many objects are in the space. So have objects that move off the screen and reappear. So I say when an SVG is updated, it should be extruded in this space. And I said, use the following for the default SVG input. And then I pasted in SVG code from a graphic that was made in Figma. So effectively what I did, and I'll show you in a moment, is I took that SVG graphic. Here it is. You can see that I can control its movement, its orbital speed, its distance. Now what it's using is it's using like a 3D JavaScript library to generate this. I could even change the depth. And over here too, I could change the count of the objects. So I can slow down that orbiting speed. I can move this around. And if I wish, I can take a screenshot and it's going to save that to my desktop. So my idea here was to make a tool for myself that would then generate these visuals. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that first prompt. What did it look like when I went back to the first thing? I don't think that it's not going to restore my version because this is duplicated from community. That's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that through like a series of prompts. So like after the first version, it's going to ask me questions. So after it was going, I needed a way to pause and resume it. So I say add a pause button and a screenshot button that'll save the current state visual as a JPEG, right? And so as each successive prompt goes forward, I begin to ask it questions, and then it then tells me what it's doing. So it's going to say that it's created the pause button that toggles the animation state. It creates a WebGL canvas and downloads the JPEG with a timestamp, right? So it's articulating these decisions. So what's really cool about this is that you're still thinking as a designer, right? You're still using your design intent. You're still sort of manifesting this notion of what you're trying to do. And what it's doing in turn is it's beginning to use that rationale. And one of the reasons that I love this is that it allows you as a designer to find opportunities for design. So as I went through, I even decided, hey, maybe I might want to change the background color, right? So if I'm changing the background color, what might that then look like? But the one thing that I did want to do was I wanted to make this more interactive. I wanted to make it feel more like a tool. So I created this ability to add additional SVGs. So if I'm in Figma and I make a graphic, so let's just make a simple, there you go. I made like a simple graphic. I'm going to flatten that and extrude it. So here I'm in Figma. If I right click, I can copy as SVG. So it's going to copy the SVG code. And then where do we go? Here we go. And then let's see, we just hit refresh on my page. Give it a sec. It's probably because I was running it on multiple screens. All right, here we go. So then I can hit add and I can paste that code. You might notice that this one's in dark mode, and that's because, hey, I asked it to enable a dark mode interface. So now that I've pasted this in, I'm going to add in more counts. You can see that I have now some of those objects in. I guess I could have made that graphic a little bit better, but as you go in, let's try to make this graphic a little bit better. Let's see, let me flatten it out. Let's rotate and flatten, copy SVG. The one thing that you're going to learn that when you work on this is that it does require, like some time, patience, and you might start to realize that you have to debug it in the same way that you would debug like another application. All right, cool. So now what we're going to do is I want to begin to talk to you about capturing things from the canvas and using those canvases as a design. I'm going to show you another basic example. As I was working on with Figma Make, I wanted to consider like, all right, how can you make an example with like very few prompts that also provides the ability for like a lot of expansion? So let's say if you are trying to figure out the types of things that you can make. So you want to consider it as being like a prototype, but that one that might be more advanced than a click-through prototype. So in Figma, it would be really hard to tell the current time. So I thought of kind of creating sort of a digital clock interface. So what I did was I took a design, right? And I took a very simple design in Figma. It was a circle and then a few bars, right? I named the minute hand, the hour hand, the second hand, and I pasted that design in. And then over time, right, I began to add more. So I used an updated design over time. And then you can see that as I'm going through, now let's use a different design instead. So I'm able to, as I'm riffing, add in additional times and add in additional prompts. So if you take a look over here back into our file, I'm going to click on clocks. You can see I actually have a couple different clocks here. I have this clock frame, right? And so this clock frame that I select here, you can see analog clock. If you want, I could walk you through how to build this out as well. But so what we'll do is we'll use this as a prompt because we want to get right into it with the Figma Make. And then I can show you in Figma, how to easily create something very similar. So here within this frame, I have analog clock. I have all of the times and numbers. Let's see, is there an extra 12 in there? Let's see, there you go. There's just an extra thing. So I have 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then I have, oh, this is mislabeled. That's my hours. This is my seconds. And this is my minutes. So naming your layers is also going to help with the translation of this into code. I'm going to select this analog clock. I'm going to right click and I am going to send this to Figma Make. When I send it to Figma Make, it's going to bring up the initial interface. Here we go. You're going to see the design right there. Then it's going to ask you to describe your idea. So here you need to be intentional. You need to start to think about how might the interface begin to think and interpret your design. So based off of how you prompt it, you're going to get different results. So what I can say is this, make this into a functioning analog clock. Use the hours, minutes, seconds, to reflect in the respective hands. Um, and then I'll say stay as close to this design as possible. And then I'll say underneath, display this time digitally, right? So let's do that. We have our attachment and we're going to run it. Now, this may take a little bit of time. And while this starts to cook, I'm going to walk you through a bit of the interface. So over here on the left, you're going to see where we have the visual. When I click on it, you're going to see it there. You're going to see the initial prompt that I have. Then you see the reasoning by the interface. So it's going to transform my static analog clock design into a fully functioning clock that shows real time with animated hands and a digital display below. Let me preserve the exact visual design while adding the time functionality, right? And so we have a preview here. We can also see it begin to generate the web code as it goes through. Over here, you're going to see that it's thinking as it works. Up here on the left, you're going to see bits with the scope. Oh, here we go. We're going to notice that maybe our clock is a little bit too large. It's functioning, which is great, but we might need another prompt because the design that we gave it was huge. So what we're going to do in this case, and it's because, like I think my interface is kind of zoomed in, but I can say, make the clock responsive to the viewport, and scale to the width and height so that it fits. And we are going to then have a successive prompt. So this prompt is then going to instruct the current functioning clock to then exist within the bounds. All right, so we can see this running here. And once again, what I would highly recommend is to, start small. I've seen a lot of folks try to go in with like fully complete interfaces and be like, make this whole thing for me. Um, as you start to familiarize yourself with prompting in this manner, as you start thinking about working with like your designs in Figma, you're going to start to figure out like what is going to work a little bit better than others. There's also like other tools out there, such as like the Figma, like MCP server, which ties into like Claude Code or other things. I've actually had like a lot of success with this. So here we go. So right now, you could see that it's probably not showing the correct time. Um, I've noticed that sometimes you need to rotate the clock hands in order for it to display correctly. So I'm going to say display this in 12-hour time. And I'm going to say, I think like it's off by a little bit. So I'm going to say, rotate the clock hands, I think it's 90 degrees. Doing math on a live stream is always hard, so forgive me if I'm a little bit off. But you can see essentially what's taking place here. It is generating the realistic code. It's generating those components. As this is being created, it's also demonstrating that reasoning for you. And so as you begin to make those changes, I can then see that reflected here. One other really cool thing about Figma Make is the ability to see it responsive. So here I mentioned that I ask for it to be a responsive design. So you can see now how it's going to scale. So it scales both to match the height and the width. And so I can then even set, different design sizes to see how that shows up. So Android compact, Android medium, right? Custom. And so then you could even go into the console, type in, prompts to kind of like see like what's going on there. I'm going to show a case a few other things. So one thing I'm just going to note is that this would be almost impossible to do in Figma prototyping on its own. I'm going to show you here this point and edit tool. The point and edit tool will allow you to select various objects within the make. And then you could either prompt to make changes. So like, let's say I hover on this little div. Um, I could either go into the code, right? So I can go to the source of that div, right? There's that div, that little round circle. Let's say I don't want it. I could just press delete and then I go back to my preview and it's gone. So if you do have coding experience, you could either go in and manually tweak things without the need to prompt. So you can make those adjustments. Other things that you can do is you can select objects and then also begin to style them just like a little bit differently. So I can come here to my 9, I can select it and I can bold just the 9. Let's say I want to bold the 3. Let's come up here, say I want to bold the 12. Let's say I come down here and I want to bold the 6. So you can make stylistic changes to the design without needing to reprompt. So the prompt to make it follow real time. So I said, make this into a functioning analog clock. Use hours, minutes, seconds to reflect in the respective hands. Stay as close to the design as possible. Underneath, display the time digitally. And that was the prompt that we used to make it. And then once again, I could show you the original design. Now, if we want to take this one step further, right? So I love the concept of a clock as a challenge, right? So in Figma, you can design a custom clock. You can design different ways to represent that clock. You can make a digital clock design. You can use custom numbers, but then you can start to think about other functions beyond just the clock itself. So what I can do here is I can say now, let's take this clock, but let's see it in multiple different time zones. So let's see, let's change, let's make the interface show all time zones in the, I'll say, in the US, display three clocks across, um, display in a grid, three clocks across. Please note the time zone under each clock. Time zone region name under each clock. So once again, we're reprompting and we're taking this into new territory wherein we have this initial design, but then we're going to change that up significantly. We're going to basically say, all right, take this clock and let's take this whole site and give it different meaning functionality. So it's going to use the existing design. We're asking it to be three across in a grid and show all time zones in the US. And we can actually see this sort of panning out in real time. We can even see the code begin to suss out. So the expectation here is we're going to see New York, Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles, Anchorage, and Honolulu. So when I go back to preview, once again, you could see that that sometimes this works and then sometimes it doesn't. So here we can go back into the mobile design and we could see that the numbers aren't displaying correctly. So what we could do here is we can basically say, ensure that all numbers are fitting within the clock design, scale down numbers if needed. Keep them in a circular design. So once again, sometimes it's a matter of undoing a prompt and redoing it. And sometimes it's a matter of asking the design to change. So the one thing that you can count on is there's always going to be some kind of hiccup. And the core concept here is that learning how best to articulate your design decisions, I think is going to be the way that you really want to begin to consider it. But let's take a look at everything that has gone well here. You know, we got Eastern, Central, we got Mountain, we got Hawaii, Alaska, Pacific, and look at that. The prompt worked. There still might be some adjustments within the design itself. Let's say we want to make sure that it's centered vertically, right? And then that way we can begin to adjust that as well. Other things that I would like to note here, once again, within the designs themselves, there's other adjustments you can make, such as padding, right? So I can make those visual adjustments right on the canvas that can then alter those designs. How cool is that? So I'll say that the language is very forgiving. Oftentimes I'm accidentally putting in spelling errors, and it usually will account for spelling errors. One thing that I haven't yet tried is prompting in other languages. That's actually a fantastic question. And what I would do is I would encourage you to test that out, see how it works. While working with it. You know, the models are very flexible and they're constantly learning. So give that a shot. All right. So this is, like one of the other previous examples that I had been working on. Okay, cool. Now, the one thing that I am going to highlight is that on EDU right now, we are currently limiting make credits. So those will refresh every month. So just be mindful that as you're working, you might hit a wall. So I think it allots between 57, 70 prompts. So just be mindful of that. All right. So let's head on back over here. I'm going to go back to the intro page. Now I'm going to show you another example. And this example is one of those where, I was thinking of this tool of making my own utility, but also as a way to create a publishable site that can be learned from, right? So I was imagining myself back when I used to teach design courses, talking to students about different color models, the okay lightness, chroma, hue, color picker being kind of an ideal, right? And this is one of those concepts where it's like the color picker itself is not one that is like reflected in Figma. So you can find this here, the OKLCH palette tool. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the published site. So bear with me one quick moment. I'm going to pull up where I have this file live. I have it in my published makes folder. Here we go. And so here, I'm going to walk you through this. The way that this initially started was I said, make a color picker based on hue, chroma, and luminance, provide a switcher that lets me choose. So it created this one here. Let's see if we can go back. Well, let me go back to it. It will. So this is going to let me go back. So this is how I started my ideation, where I was like, give me a hue and it gave me the wrong one. It gave me a hue, saturation, lightness, right? So then I'm like, have the color picker based on hue, chromacity, and luminance. And then you can then see, I realized that there's another color model that's more superior, which is OKLCH. And you can see that after a few prompts, I went to creating the LCH color picker where I could change the lightness, their chromacity, and hue. And I generated another little window here that then allowed me to see some of the existing color harmonies. So I was able to see complementary color harmony based off of this initial color. And then I also wanted it to allow me to choose custom harmonies where I'm picking colors around the color wheel. So I could say 30, I could say 45, I could say 50, and it's generating this color palette and it gives me the ability to copy it. You might see that it failed copy paste, and that's because sometimes when you are working within the environment, these functions right here actually need to work in like a working environment. So what you want to do is you actually want to publish this to see those outcomes. But I'm going to walk you through a few more steps of the building of this color picker and how it led my ideation and like my thought process to continue adding to it. Once again, it's using a default system for generating the UI. So this is one of those examples where I started with a prompt with no design. I wanted to see how might it be generated on the screen. And if you're a designer, what you can do is, let's say you have no starting point from like a concept, you can begin prompting out a concept, and then this helps you build out all of the opportunities for design, right? So you might not have an idea of what a color picker might look like or a suggestion palette might look like, or even hear the fact that when I hit copy all, there's a toast that kind of pops up. So as you begin interacting with it, it's starting to give you a model by which you can base your designs for that you can then swap out with your own designs. So here, as I'm working through some of these examples, right? So I eventually had the idea to make the concept of taking an SVG graphic and then recoloring it. And so it gave me some random SVG graphic. And then I started to take that like further and further. Let's see, is it allowing me to zoom all the way down? Here, let me just go to the current one. I'm going to go to my live site in the web browser. And what I've effectively done here is I've made the tool a recolorer. So once again, this is where I can take a design, right? So I'm going to pick the colors. I can choose custom harmonies. So let's say I can add in additional designs here, right? So like, let's say like 35, 40, 45, right? And it's building up, and then I can remix those colors, right? I can then copy those values and I can then paste it back into Figma, right? And so, same thing where I can take an existing design. So let's say here in Figma, I'm going to create like a fun little graphic, right? Let's just put in a couple shapes. Let's give myself a polygon, right? I'm going to put in some shapes here, right? And let's actually here make an arc tool. So I have these objects, and let's just make them all gray for now. Let's just replace that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that as SVG, and I'm going to head back over to my window. And here I'm going to paste that SVG code. And you're going to see that it then allows me to recolor it right here. And then I can copy it and I can bring it back into Figma. And I got those colors. So likewise, I can change the base color. And so what I find here is this opportunity to like make my own tools, right? And so you can see here now I have these like cool options that are based off of color harmonies that I've generated using the tool. So, you know, in thinking about the types of things that you're going to make with Make, right? You can definitely make prototypes. You can make working examples. But making utilities that can help your own design process, I think is going to be one of like the most powerful approaches for this. So right now I'm using, like I said, like an SVG as being the intermediary between the two. But yeah, there's like a lot that can be done with that. All right, let's see. We got any questions? All right. So I'm going to show another example. I know like I'm kind of going through some like higher concept ideas, but the thing that I want to show you here is in that Glyph visualizer, right? We're able to expand beyond what could be done with Figma. We're creating like 3D scenes and spaces and controlling it with an interface. With the functional clock, right? We're expanding the concept of a prototype by using real data, real time. Um, and then with the color picker, what we're doing is like we're kind of expanding beyond our utility. So this is a color picker in a color model that isn't within our tool, but we can use the tool to generate it. And then we can further propagate the process of that tool by generating tools that can help us on our own. I'm going to show you another little example that I put together. This is my drum machine. And let's go to, I'm going to share computer sound so you can hear this okay. And once again, this is many prompts in. So I said, make a music sequencer for a drum machine, include options for kick, snare, cymbals, cowbells, and claves. Each sequence has the option of 16 notes, allow a setting to change the beats per minute. So from there, and this is just not using my design, but once again, it's like me thinking out loud and kind of working through how I might build this. So I'm just going to hit play. And you can even see here, I can change the beats per minute. And then, so as I'm building this out, the one key learning that I would recommend to y'all is that as I was working on this, I noticed that it was kind of slow. It didn't allow me to like make edits. So here I'm making edits. I could actually clear a bunch of these, right? You could hear the kick. I could change the kick. And so these are all things that I had to say. It's like, okay, I want a different kick. I want a different snare. So I still needed to do the research to understand different concepts to then employ here. As I began building, I started thinking, okay, cool. And then it also kind of becomes like a tool for like my own learning. As I'm kind of working with this, I might figure out what are new opportunities for design within the tool itself. And then I can start to even build out a tool that's almost like for performance. So now within this concept itself, I was like, all right, can I really push this? Can I upload custom content? So we already know that I can add in visuals here, but like, let's say within the concept of this drum machine, what if I have sounds that I want to include on my own? And I literally prompted it for upload utility. So here I'm just going to type in MP3 and let's see. I had, let's say, Figma MP3. There we go. And so I added a Figma sound. So let's see what that sounds like. And then once again, it's like I'm thinking about this concept like, oh, that's really cool, but I can also pitch it up and down. So I added this little slider here. You'll notice for a sampler, it behaves a little bit different. So I actually prompted it that when I'm working with a sampler, and then I've even told it for shortcut keys, I can press the space bar. So I could even mute it and things like that. And once again, this is the sort of thing where it's like, if you can think of it, right, you can think about how you might want it to behave, how you might want to work with it. Still going to require sort of research on your side. You might say, how might I build this? I even considered like I needed to rearrange these. So it gives me the option to rearrange them. All of these were intentional prompts. So as I'm building this out, I'm thinking about what I might need, what's going to work. And then I'll even show you one other thing that I prompted in here that added a lot of success. So when I hit play, I've added in these punch-in effects. So punch-in effects allows me to modify the behavior of the sampler as it's working. And I basically instructed each of these effects based off of my expectation of that behavior. So when I play, so it's randomizing. And then right here, I can divide it and pause it, or I could do a two-step loop. So now it's looping. You can see it's looping on two. And it's with this, I want to say that playing around with Figma Make is going to give you the opportunity to get very close to making a realistic product. Once again, this is something that I can go to publish. I can copy this to the clipboard. You all can play with that site live right now. So the link that I just shared with you, when you click on that link, it gives you the opportunity to go there to play with it. As you begin playing, I've included other examples, and you might notice that it might not be perfectly responsive. So in the future, those are other considerations that you might want to make if you're going to be targeting for a um, mobile device. One thing that I'm also going to let y'all know is that oftentimes when you are generating and you're creating things, you are having this chat go on in the left-hand side. Oftentimes, it will suggest other things that you can do. So if you are prompting for the first time and you're looking for like, oh, I don't know what I might do next, it's actually pretty good at making additional reasoning, especially on that first prompt. So right here, the links are all embedded into custom Figma domains. When you go to publish, there is an option right here to connect your own domain. So I believe you do have the opportunity to do one file with a connected domain. So you're right. Currently, the base domain is going to be a Figma subsite, but you should have the opportunity with the education plan, I believe, to connect one domain. What I would recommend is check out the help site, help.figma.com, for a lot of these specifics, because it could be that my specific account demonstrate this and you might not have the ability to do that. So always check help.figma.com if you have a question regarding one of these features. So as of now, I believe you should be able to connect one domain with a education plan, but there's a good chance that I'm just getting a slightly different experience than you can, and it can be something that I can follow up with and answer later as well. All right, cool. So the last example that I'm going to show you here is, once again, this is this is a also, once again, I would please ask folks in the chat not to share links. I understand that this is in the spirit of Figma links, but we would please try to avoid sharing those as well. Please, thank you. So one thing that I'm going to mention here, if you look in here, there's like another design. I'm going to show you a design that I kind of like worked on. Now, when prompting this, there's varying degrees of success, but I at least wanted to show you my approach to sort of building a functional design that then gets translated by Figma Make to make something a bit more realistic. Let's show you, I'll show you here what the current one looks like. And then I'm going to show you the breakdown of the Figma file, and then I'll show you how this can then be made. So this is a digital clock. I designed this digital clock in Figma. This is not using a font. Made it such that you can change the colors, and it shows a little like PM logo down here. Once again, I love the idea of using a clock as a kind of like the very first example that you make, right? Because there's so many opportunities for design. You can make alarm clocks, you can make time zone clocks, you can make countdowns, you can make split timers. There's any number of different ways that it can be interpreted. So building out, some sort of representation of time, I think is like a really good way to get started. You could even kind of build tasks associated with creating a clock. So if you're wondering why two clock examples, it's one of those that can be done with just a few prompts, and there's still a lot of time and opportunity for original design as you're building that out. So I'm going to head on over here and I'm going to demonstrate how this was constructed. So I basically created a like little digit piece, right? And then if I take a look in outline mode with Command Y, you can see that what I've done is I've constructed those pieces, right? So here's my like little piece. I've constructed those pieces and used a component set to build that out, right? So it's just taking a single piece, right? They kind of just snap together and, built in Figma. And then, you can kind of like select these all effectively to change the color, so then that way they're enabled and showing that number. So what we have here is a component set. The component set has each one of these as an individual component. So as that's built out, the component set has them all here, and they're all named as such. So if I was to take this component, you could see right here the property that we have. Maybe I'll give it a proper name. So I'm going to type in the property should be digit. So here now the digit, it could be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And once again, because it's a component, I can select it. I could change the selection colors to be red. There it is. And you can see that as I'm changing the numbers, it keeps that override for the colors. So this was the initial component that I made. So this component is based off of this component. And then they're arranged here on the canvas with a divider. And this then becomes the frame. And then this might be my prompt for other colors. So this file is included if you want to use this as an example to start off with. So once again, I can copy this. I can head on over to Figma Make. Set in here, I'm going to create a new make. And in here, I can paste the design. So while that's pasting in, this, once again, as much context as you can give it, the better off that you will be. So I'm going to say convert this design to a digital clock, right? Use 12-hour time, update, hours, minutes, seconds, have the design be responsive to the device viewport and scale both horizontally and vertically. So here we go, convert this design, use the nested components to show each digit, stay as close to the design as possible. All right, and then we're going to give this a shot. And the reason I included this example is that it's complex, right? There's a big delta between the visuals that I made on the canvas and that actual output. Oftentimes, folks are just going to use like a font to represent the time, but by creating it as a, like using those components, there's nothing outside of just the labeling of those numbers to give indication on how those should work. So we haven't done the color variants yet. I'm going to do that as like a secondary prompt, but that's a good call. So first we want to see that it's working, and then we're going to give it the color variants. And once again, this is like a live workflow, right? For this workshop, I didn't want to speed stuff up. I didn't want to show y'all a bunch of stuff that was already made. I mean, I have showed you a bunch of stuff that was already made, but I do want to give you this realistic example so you can begin to see how you might work with it. And you can see that it flailed miserably. So this was not a good output. So please use the original design. Actually, let's zoom out and see what's going on here. I've never had it fail this miserably. This is pretty bad. Please use the original design to display the time and the digits. The current output does not reflect a working clock at all. And I'm going to remind you all that, just like Joanna said, in order to have access to, well, both Figma Make and Figma Sites, it does require re-verification. So you are going to need to demonstrate that you're part of a boot camp or higher ed institution. When you go through that process, if you run into hiccups on the way, feel free to email education@figma.com. It is going to require that you provide documentation of your school. For boot camps, it is the responsibility of the boot camp to get you signed up. So if you are currently taking like an online course that is like a certificate, it is going to be the boot camp itself that is going to provide your verification. So it is on them to register with Figma, and it's up to them to send us your details for verification. There we go. We're getting a little bit closer. So here we go. We got 2:54 p.m. I'm going to say here, let's see. Right now, the design is still just way too big. So it's demonstrating everything well. So fit the clock to the viewport and make it responsive. And then now I'm actually going to head on over here. Let's grab these colors. Add in the above interface to make the user to, let's say, give the ability to change the color of the clock. All right. And then let's give that a shot. So we can see that it is in fact displaying in 12-hour time. It is using the digits that we created, and it is in the space, right? And it's also, it even dropped in like a little PM there. So whether or not we want to include that, we can actually spot edit that with the little point and edit tool here. All right. So one thing again, once you verify properly, you must create an education team. So if you already have like a starter team, it'll ask you to convert that starter team into an education team. On that education team, that's where you'll be able to create all of those files. So some of you might already have like a pro team, right? By verifying for education, it doesn't make all your pro teams education teams, but it gives you the ability to upgrade any starter teams that you have to be education teams. So sorry if that feels like a little confusing, but you can basically have different types of teams on the same account. So like myself, I have a paid team that I use for my own personal projects. I have a few education teams for whenever I'm adjuncting or I'm teaching, outside of Figma. And then I have like a starter team that I use to just kind of collaborate with random folks. So just by creating the education team, it doesn't make all your teams education. It just gives you that ability to re-verify and get those going. All right, so you could see that it's kind of like recreating, recalculating. It says it's going to enhance the clock to be fully responsive and add the color picker interface. So it said that it's done it. It's responsive design, color picker interface, dynamic color system, flexible layout. The other thing that I would say here too, oh, we're close. No cigar. It does pull in the colors. So here, let's see if we could select this whole section. And I'm going to prompt it. And I'm going to say, make horizontal, move to the bottom right of the window. And you can see we got the functional clock. It's just a matter of like space and how it's there. And then so you just have to kind of give it that point, give it that direction in order to make those changes. All right. So as we are closing up here today, Joanna, do we have any questions from the chat? We have many questions. Let's take a look at the questions. All right, so are the prototypes for Figma Make at some point going to be transferable to Figma Design? I know that this is something that is really, really, really like highly requested. I know the team is aware of it, and I can't comment on roadmap on when it's going to become available, but let's just say that this is something that a lot of people are asking for, so we're aware of the value in having that. Can I design a static web page and use Make to make it interactive, add micro interactions? You absolutely can, but you can also use Figma Sites. Within Figma Sites, there is also prompting where you can prompt individual sections to make them interactive. So check out Figma Sites as well. Does the code it generates meet WCAG standards? So it doesn't implicitly do that, but you can request it on prompts. So if you want it to meet, certain accessibility needs, by being intentional, and by going in and you can make a lot of those changes. It's oftentimes not going to produce that output by default for you as it's just attempting to get it right. But you can go in, you can make edits to your divs, you can make things more compliant, and you can also request that certain things get modified to be more accessible, to be higher contrast, or you can even put in switchers that kind of change modes of the page to make it more accessible. Will there be limits to the amount of files given in the change. So I don't know if there's limits to files. The limits that you might incur is number of published sites. I believe with sites you can publish one, and I think with Make you'll be able to publish one. So it's a matter of like publishing one, you might have to unpublish it and publish one back out with the EDU teams. So I would refer back to help.figma.com. I know that these kind of limits might change over time. So I don't want to give you like an explicit, you can only do one or you can only do two. Check help.figma.com, and at any given point, that'll be updated with regards to what you can do. And if you find that those limits are very cumbersome, email us at education@figma.com. We would love to know more of the needs that you have, so then that way we can best address them. Will there be limits to the amount of files? I think I said that there's no amount of files. It's just going to be like publishing and or the AI credits that you're going to encounter. All right, let's take a look. So we got this horizontal. We got it displaying the time, right? And there it is. It's not full screen currently. We got pretty close. But you can see that like, with a little bit more time, let's see, where's my other digital clock? With a little bit more time, you can kind of create something that can kind of get there with additional prompts. I think it took quite a few here to get exactly where it needed to go. And you can see like kind of the original design that I was working with there. All right, let's wrap this up. A few more questions. What's the most complex thing that I built with Make? It's definitely the drum machine. The drum machine took 157 prompts. So 157. I have like pages in there. I could save it. I can upload. So that was clearly the most elaborate one that I've made. And fun fact, I did a live set at a Figma meeting with the drum machine. When do the number of credits refresh during the month? I believe it's at the beginning of the month. Once again, check help.figma.com for those specifics in that. Sometimes, they may change up over time. So if you see that there's like a difference between this month and next month, this stuff is still super fresh. It's still rolling out. So there might be adjustments between, now and like a month or two from now, but you will get those refreshed credits on a rolling basis, and Make will be providing it for your EDU team. So here, when you press publish on a Make, is it available to the community or does the creator alone have access? There's actually two ways that you can publish it. When you go to publish, right, this publish will publish it to a website. And then when you click feature on community, it will put it on the Make community. However, when you go to share, and you publish a community here, it gets only published to your community profile page. So when you publish a community this way, it's going to give you options for changing the preview, adding the description. When you publish this way, it'll put it on community, but you have fewer options, and it just kind of makes it available for other people to remix. And that example site will get generated for you. So then that way you can share that with others. So I know it seems a little confusing, but this publish mechanism to publish it as a website and to just kind of share it quickly to community. This way to share it to community with thumbnail tags and more options to give it a little bit more like SEO and a better presentation on your community page. All right, can we animate using Figma Make? You can absolutely animate using Figma Make. Some things that I've seen people do is actually make animation tools where they can like control like easing curves and stuff. So not only can you animate, but you can make tools for animation using Figma Make. And does the model give more accurate outputs by pasting and referencing a Figma frame rather than an image? Yes, it's going to do a more accurate readout when you paste a Figma frame rather than sharing an image, because the Figma frame is going to have context of other things. The thing that I'll just kind of note right here with the clock design, because I'm including instances of this component, right? That instance kind of has the context of all of the different variants for this component, giving you a richer output. So yes, if you use a Figma frame, it'll actually have the context of the named layers, the auto layout, as well as the colors, values that you're working with specifically. All right, so that's going to be it for today. Thank you all so much. Thanks for bearing with me too. Make outputs can be one way or the other. I think we actually had a pretty good run for like a live demo. Please let us know what you would like to see more of in upcoming workshops. We do post these about a week or two out after the actual event. So keep your eyes peeled on YouTube and your emails for the recordings. Thanks again for the wonderful questions. Big thank you to Joanna. Absolutely want to encourage you all to share it to community. So if you have anything that you made, you're really excited about it, feel free to share that publicly with others. Thank y'all and happy designing.